The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Pensionmark's December webinar where we will be discussing budgeting. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. A few items to go over before we get started. First, in order to ensure everyone has the ability to hear the information presented by our guest speaker, everyone will be on mute during the webinar. Second, please feel free to write in any questions you have using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. At the end of the webinar, we will take the time to go through these together. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker of Prudential, Dallas Chastian. Dallas is a regional retirement counselor and helps participants with understanding individual investment options, developing sound asset allocation and saving strategies, and navigating administrative processes while using dynamic retirement planning tools. Dallas entered the financial services industry in 1995 and joined Prudential in 2008. She has a BA in Labor Studies and an MA in Behavioral Sciences, both from California State University, Dominguez Hills. She holds Series 6 and 63 registrations, as well as life, health, and variable annuity licenses. Thanks for presenting today, Dallas. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Renata, and good morning or afternoon to all of you, depending upon where you may be. It is my pleasure to conduct this webinar session for you. As she mentioned, my name is Dallas Chastain, and I am with Prudential Retirement. This particular presentation will focus on creating a solid budget, and as we know, it can be a little bit challenging at times. You know that budgeting and saving works when it comes to covering your fixed monthly expenses. It also, though, is one of the best ways to prepare for long-term for retirement. So this webinar will show you the importance of creating a budget and how to establish some easily adaptable methods to save for retirement. Okay, sorry about that. Here is the page that I was just talking about, and it's about making sure that we prepare for the future and make sure that we budget appropriately. Now, one of the things that we focus on is, of course, when we will retire, and the normal retirement age is still 65, yet as we know, people are living a lot longer, and the point of this is to just make sure that you begin to prepare or plan for a longer retirement. The focus of today's session will be on making sure that we have a better retirement outcome, and therefore want to focus on budgeting. What is a budget? As we know, it's really a matter of looking at our income versus our expenses, and then determining how much there is for some of those items that we need to save for the future. Why create a budget? Very important to keep track of what we spend and how we can save more. Going to focus on where or how to begin a budget, why automate it, and what to do next. Now, when it comes to retirement and when it comes to saving, it's interesting to note that we have certain behaviors. And before I get into how to make good choices when it comes to planning for the future, I want to take a moment to discuss why we sometimes struggle when we know it's the right thing to do. Sometimes it seems like our brains are not hardwired to make rational decisions when it comes to saving for our future. We worked with a team of psychologists to determine the 5 most pressing human behavior obstacles that stand in the way of securing long-term financial security. And I want to go over those with you now. The first one is the longevity disconnect. That is, I might live how long? If you were to close your eyes right now and try to see yourself at the age of 65 or 70 or retirement age, it would probably be difficult to picture yourself at that point in time. We know our present self and we know our past self, but trying to look at our future self is very challenging. If we treat our future self as a stranger, then why would we save for that stranger? So it's important then to realize that you will become that future retired individual and to start thinking about setting aside those dollars for the future that you want, because you will thank you later. The next one is procrastination. I'll do it later. On average, we procrastinate 2 hours per day. The harder the task, the more we will procrastinate, whether it comes to budgeting, saving, whatever the case may be. If it's something that is not that pleasant to us, then we will continue to put it off. And this is where you want to make sure that you begin taking those steps to look at what you're doing to ensure your financial security. The next one is optimism bias. Oh, that won't happen to me. That's that preconceived notion that bad things won't happen to us. If I only save $50 a month and I do that for 20 years, I should be in great shape for retirement. Yet that's probably not going to be the case. It's seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. And while it's great to be optimistic, we also have to be realists and make sure that if there is an unforeseen circumstance that comes up, that we're adequately prepared for it. The next one is overreaction. I just can't resist. This is where we let our emotions guide our decisions. And we see this more often than not when it comes to investing. Look at what happened in 2008, the herd mentality. And so we want to make sure that when these types of situations are occurring, that we step back for a moment and we reconsider what we're doing so that we don't let those emotions get in the way of perhaps making those long-term decisions. And the last one is impulse control. I want it now. We are simply hardwired to want things today. It's hard to put things off for the future. We are now in the midst of holiday season. How many of you have been out there and said, oh, that's something that I want, that's something that I want? It's those impulse purchases where then we look back and think, do I really need that, or do I just want it? And we're constantly bombarded and tempted by these things. But it's really a matter of reanalyzing and saying, well, based on my budget, do I really need this item or do I want it? So that then if you don't need it, you can set those extra dollars aside for other things that will be more important in the future. Whenever you're challenged with any of these types of behaviors, because we all experience them, step back for a moment and think, how can I do more for that future retired self that I will become? How do I make sure that I don't put off doing things I should do today until tomorrow? Am I being realistic about some of the circumstances and some of the things that might be going on in my life? How are my investments performing? And am I looking at the long term, or am I getting caught up in that day-to-day type of situation where the news and others are giving me that emotional type of reaction that might hamper my future decisions? And think about when you pick up that item at the store or when you are looking online, do you really have to have those new pair of shoes or that new technological gadget? Is it really something that you have to have, or is it that you just want it? Because, again, we are wired to want things today. Think about putting it off until the future. Now, there's no doubt that it is challenging to save. It is challenging for us to put money aside for the long term, but there are some savings strategies that you can utilize today in order to ensure that you have that better tomorrow. Finding extra money for retirement or saving in general can be challenging, as I mentioned, but here are a few strategies that you can consider. To begin, you want to make sure that you have the right mix of investments in your retirement account. As you approach retirement, many people become more conservative with their investment approach. You may want to reconsider that, because remember, if you become too conservative too soon, then you may not be growing the money sufficiently enough when you still have time to take some of that potential risk in order to gain those potential better returns over time. Another thing to remember is that many of us enter our peak earning years in our 40s. And as you approach retirement, so for those a little older who are empty nesters, college costs may be behind you, and you can really concentrate on saving. This is then where you want to begin to increase your contributions annually. And even by doing that by 1%, it's going to make a huge difference over time. I encourage everyone to always take a look at, are you saving enough? Can you do more? And those small increases, as I mentioned, can really add up. So think about that as you move forward in this journey towards that financial future that you want. Now, the next one is to take advantage of catch-up features. That is, if you happen to be 50 or better, you can actually save an additional $6,000 in your retirement account. So this is a great way to set aside some of those additional dollars, reduce your taxable income, and make sure that you are taking full advantage of the IRS limit that's in place of $24,000 for 2017. By the way, that will be the same limit going into 2017. I think I just may have mentioned 2017. I'm already there, and it hasn't even happened. But that is going to be the IRS limit in 2017 as well. So take advantage of, again, being able to save more for yourself. With regard to your savings, you can also supplement that with an individual retirement account. So if you have some extra retirement money, then you can put that aside for the future. So individual retirement accounts function a little bit differently. That's something that you can find more information through your financial institution or your bank, but those individual retirement accounts do offer you another opportunity to save for the future. The limits there are a little bit different because you are an individual versus saving through a plan-sponsored type of retirement account, but certainly something to consider if you're looking for some additional investment vehicles to put your money in for the future. Want to look at college versus retirement. If there are still some college debt that you may have, or even for your children, certainly you want to balance that out. But remember that you want to save enough for yourself, because you will have to depend on yourself when it comes to retirement. So a lot of things to, again, think about for the future. You may want to look at your home as a source of extra retirement money. So consider refinancing the mortgage. You want to stay on top of interest rates. If they fall enough, you might consider refinancing and directing any savings to your plan. And generally, try to economize on such things as utilities. See that your home is well insulated. Sign up for your utilities budget plan, which may be helpful in controlling monthly expenses. Now, when it comes to budget plans, you want to make sure that you create that budget and you try to stick to it as best as possible. You want to track what we call mystery money. The $3 latte here, the lunch out instead of brown bagging, the $7 weekly car wash. Those are items that will add up very quickly, and as you know, they are expenses. So you want to definitely make sure that you track that, because each of those items that you put aside or that you perhaps start to curtail a bit is money that you can then put aside for your retirement. So these are those little items that we may not be aware of, but if you were to create that budget worksheet, create the budget plan, and then begin to track the spending on a weekly and ongoing basis, you're going to find that there's quite a bit of money that we spend on, again, what? Those impulse items, Starbucks, whatever the case may be, going out to lunch, that McDonald's, all of those things really do add up, and it's money that can be set aside for other purposes. You want to review your insurance policies. Those are things that sometimes we don't particularly pay a lot of attention to, but no doubt they can add up. So this is something to keep track of, perhaps on an annual basis. Look at your car insurance, your home insurance. All of those policies, are there ways to consolidate and combine that in order to minimize the cost, to make sure that you're saving some money that, again, you can put elsewhere. The biggest way to, of course, save money is to not buy, that is, and borrow instead. So you want to focus on a number of these different items so that you can put more aside. Now, with regard to the next one, I like to click coupons. Yes, coupons. They definitely do add up, and they help you, particularly when you may go out to dinner or even for the grocery store. Those do help in minimizing how much you spend either on groceries or other items out there. And one of the things that's interesting is with regard to having more for tomorrow is to not retire just yet. If you happen to look at retirement age as solely 65, remember with regard to Social Security, it's not based on your year of birth, that is what your full retirement age will be. And so it's not 65 for everyone. So if you're able to delay retirement or put it off, then that's one more year that you're able to save in your plan. That's one more year that you will not be taking Social Security dollars, so that you can really build those up. And if you're able to wait until age 70, then of course you will receive quite a bit more. And when it comes to Social Security, the one thing I always like to point out and encourage for individuals to do, if you have not done this already, is to go out to the Social Security Administration website, ssa.gov, or just simply type in Social Security Administration. And this is where you will be able to obtain your most current Social Security statement. Because for many, those statements are not being mailed via U.S. mail any longer. And when it's out of sight, it tends to be out of mind. So it is important then that we monitor that information. So it's a very simple process. You go into My Social Security, create that account. You'll be asked some specific questions that only you will know. And then you will be asked to create your user ID password. And now you will be able to access your most recent Social Security statement. The reason I stress that it's so important as well is because, as we know in this day and age, with identity fraud, with computer glitches, human errors, people having the same last name, first name, middle initial, well, things happen. And if we're not monitoring that information now, then that's something you might have to contend with way down the road, and that's not something that's going to be pleasant. So this way now you can see all of your information, make sure that your name is correct, your year of birth, your date of birth, your Social Security number, all of your earnings history from your employers. That's very, very important because that's how the benefit is being calculated. You'll also want to then see, well, if I start to collect at 62 versus my full retirement age versus age 70, how much would I receive? So it's very pertinent information to your planning for the future and incorporating it into part of that budgeting process. So this is something that will take only a few minutes out of your busy schedule, but it is very, very important. What Social Security will do 3 months prior to your birthday, just like you would receive the statement in the mail, will now send you an email indicating that your information has been updated. Now you can log in through the Social Security Administration website and then retrieve the most current document so that you can then double check everything and make sure that your earnings history from the previous year was sent in correctly. You can double check all of the other information as well. So take a few moments, but remember, Social Security is only a small piece of that retirement income, and therefore these are the reasons that we have to do so much more in order to create that solid financial future. And budgeting is a process that we use in the interim in order to track the income, track our spending, and be able to set those dollars aside for the future. So it's going to be a matter, of course, what your particular plans are, but certainly if you are able to delay it for a few years and not perhaps retire at 62 or at 65 and wait until full retirement age, that's going to give you not only more money from Social Security, but also gives you the opportunity to do more for yourself through your retirement plan or individual retirement account or savings, whatever method you're using in order to create that financial wellness. And the last item here is one that I find very interesting, and that is to give your retirement a trial run. I've run across some individuals over some meetings I've conducted, and I've had a few that have actually tried this, and that is where you decide how much you want to live on annually, and now, while you're still working, try to live on that amount for a month. So this then can give you a good idea as to whether your goal is reasonable or not. Now, I have spoken to a couple of individuals that have tried this, and they said that it was quite a challenge. Apparently, it is doable, but there's no doubt that there are going to have to be some adjustments made. So if you're looking for something different and you might be a bit closer to retirement, then this might be something that you'll want to incorporate or try out, maybe for 6 months, but at least give yourself that trial run to see if you will be able to live on what you think is going to be reasonable for you to live the lifestyle that you want. Now, we talked about some ways to save money. So now let's look at the other side of the coin, which is debt. And as we can see here, not all debt is bad. There is good debt. Now, take your mortgage. For many people, buying a house is a way to build home equity, which can then later be turned into retirement assets. Of course, the home you buy should be affordable relative to your income and lifestyle. Be sure to consider such things as property taxes, insurance, and maintenance when choosing a home. This is a long-term investment, as you know, not a short-term cash opportunity. And certainly, there will be expenses that you'll still face once in retirement, because as we know, homes need maintenance as they get older, so it's still going to cost you some money even in retirement. A college loan also may be good debt because you are investing in your education and that of your children's. So we can see here that education is rarely a mistake, but you still want to consider the cost of the school as compared to the career opportunity and income you hope to realize to make sure you understand all the aspects of your education investment. And lastly, taking a loan to buy a car can be good debt. Having it for a period of time after it's paid off is definitely a smart financial move. So if you are getting that car, certainly, and keeping it for a while, that is considered as good debt. Now, these 3 items are considered, as I mentioned, as good debt, but what can be considered bad debt? Well, as we know, there is bad debt, and it can certainly sabotage our saving strategy. Credit cards are probably the biggest component of that, as you can see, because we are so used to using plastic. Very rarely anymore are we using cash. It's all about debit and credit cards, but credit cards certainly even much more. And part of that has to do with the fact that if you don't have a credit card, you can't get a rental card. There's so many things that cannot do with that credit card. So they do become kind of that vicious cycle in a way. But as you can see here, credit card debt is the 3rd largest source of household debt. Only mortgage debt, which you can see here of $156,760, is the largest piece of the largest part of debt, followed by student loans, which is $32,953. But as you can see, average credit card debt is $15,706. And there's no doubt that the number of credit cards you have can be an issue. The average number of credit cards per U.S. cardholder is 9.5. So this is definitely something that we have to look at. If we have a lot of credit cards, are they really that necessary? So that way you can manage it more easily by having fewer credit cards and making sure that you consolidate as much as possible. So when we look at some strategies for really reducing the debt, we want to consider a few of these items here. Keep a minimum number of credit cards, and for the ones you have, make sure that you get the lowest interest rate when possible. So that's something that we want to focus on, certainly to make sure that we can pay as much as possible and keep those interest rates low. Pay more than the minimum, as we know, on those revolving balances, and reduce or stop altogether if possible making additional charges. Again, this might be a little bit challenging, particularly now that we're in the holiday season. Very easy to get that credit card out and continue to charge because we want to buy those items or those presents for all of our loved ones and for our friends. Now, let me give you an example of what happens if you just pay the minimum on your cards each month. Suppose you owe $1,000 on your credit card. You have a 21% interest rate with a minimum 2% payment due of $20. If you only pay the minimum, it will take you 235 months or nearly 20 years to retire the loan. And that $1,000 purchase will cost you $2,800 in interest. If instead of $20 you pay $100 a month, then the balance in 1 year, you would retire, the balance in 1 year and pay only $109 in interest. So it is important, and certainly the credit card companies have done a much better job now, because when you get your statement, it shows you that information. If you only pay the minimum, this then is how long it's going to take you to pay off the card and what you will pay in interest charges. So that's a good way of kind of nudging us a bit in order to pay more than that minimum so that we can get that debt paid off much quicker and definitely avoid some of those additional interest charges that we are paying for. Now, rather than having to pay extra on credit cards, consider what you are buying before you even pull out the plastic. Do you really need that thing you're about to charge today? Remember, impulse purchasing, right? Or are you falling into the trap of impulse buying? Psychologically, paying with cash is a little harder than with plastic. It seems more real, and you might be a little less likely to do it. But if you don't want to pay with cash, when you think plastic, think pause first to make sure you really want the item. With regard to your mortgage, make an extra payment against the mortgage annually and direct all this money to go to the principal. Or if your lending institution allows, pay biweekly instead of monthly. You are basically paying the same amount, but you will retire the loan quicker. Although mortgage debt is one of the better forms of debt to have, you will find retirement to be more affordable without a mortgage than with one. So that's something to think about as you move forward with your strategy for what kind of debt you will actually take into retirement. But certainly the goal would be to have that home paid off, have all of the credit cards paid off as well, or to definitely keep it at a minimum. You can consolidate loans. There are a number of different ways of doing that. So certainly if you are able to, this way you can take advantage of perhaps some of those lower interest rates, keep those credit cards to a minimum, no doubt, and be able to keep track of that much easier, because now you may have only several payments versus having 10 or 15 payments depending upon the number of credit cards that you have. And finally, don't withdraw from your retirement accounts. This is something that's very, very important. We are tempted to want to take money from our retirement account to pay off the credit cards or to purchase that new car or the new gadget that's out there. And this is definitely not the place to do that, particularly when it comes to credit cards, even more so. And I do often get this question about taking a loan from a 401k plan or some type of a qualified retirement account in order to pay off those credit cards because of the high interest rate, because of just the structure of those credit cards and the debt. But the thing is that, as we know, credit cards can be very tempting, and there's that vicious cycle. So if you use your retirement dollars to pay off credit card and then fall right back with the fall right back into that pattern again, then now you've actually impacted your retirement savings, paying yourself back that loan through automatic payroll deduction. And if you start to use those credit cards once again, then you have that payment that you're going to experience on a monthly basis. So please do not use your retirement accounts to get rid of credit card debt, because it is something that we will face forever, it seems, because those credit cards will not go away. So you definitely don't want to fall into that trap of utilizing your retirement assets to pay off credit cards. So looking at getting started to build that budget now, we do have a website that you can go to. It's budgetcalc.connectwithcrew.com, where you can start to build that budget. As I mentioned, it might be a little bit challenging when it comes to putting together that budget, because we have to be honest, we have to track that spending, and that's sometimes something that we may not want to face, but it will make it easier then for you to track your spending habits and where that money is going. Now, when it comes to your investments, it is very, very important to make sure that you are monitoring that information on an ongoing basis. So you want to make sure that that investment strategy that you have in place is what works for you. So you want to look at your time horizon. You want to also consider the type of investor you are. Did you choose the investments on your own? And if so, then are they adequate for the type of strategy that you have in place for the future? So you want to monitor that on an ongoing basis. You can always utilize tools that will help you determine how you feel about investing and the type of investor that you are, and then monitor or make those changes as necessary. Typically, we want to look at that information on an annual basis, just to ensure that you are still on track for your future. Rebalancing is very important. That is, you want to look at your various investments and rebalance those, because what will happen is there will be some investments that will perform better than others over time, and so it will throw your portfolio out of balance. The whole concept of rebalancing is where you are then initiating the buy low, sell high concept of investing. And so then this will initiate that process, will rebalance the portfolio and bring back everything as it was initially. And so it is encouraged and recommended that you do this at least once a year. And you want to make sure that you adjust over time, because we age, we get older, and we get closer to retirement. We want to make sure then that the portfolio is in line with our time horizon, meaning that if you are 64 years of age and you're retiring in 1 year, then you most likely don't want to have a portfolio that consists of 90% stocks and 10% bonds. That might be a little too risky for you. Remember, though, we do want to adjust, but make those adjustments so that they still provide us with an opportunity to earn some money on our money, but in a way that's also in accordance with the time frame that we have left before retirement. So you want to keep asset allocation, as you can see, working for you, and these are three important elements. Monitor your account, do that on an ongoing basis, rebalance it at least once a year, and make sure that you're keeping in mind your time horizon to retirement, so that whatever adjustments need to be made, that you make those at that point. Lastly, if you do have other outside assets and you want to roll those over at any time, then you can do that. When it comes to having an account, wherever, whatever employer you may be with, you can, if you have other outside assets, it just makes it easier for you to manage your account. You have one call center, you have one statement, one website address, particularly these days when we have so many user IDs and passwords that we have to remember. So it makes it that much more convenient when you have everything in one place. Of course, it's up to you, But if you do have other outside assets and you have different statements that you're receiving and you have to go to different websites and call centers, think about it. It's not just for you, but it's also your beneficiaries. Because if they don't know where these multiple accounts are, and God forbid something happens, then that's not going to be a very pleasant experience for them. So it just makes it simple, not for you only, but also for your loved ones. And lastly, this is the budget worksheet. So if you are looking to get started on creating this, then we do have this available to you through our Prepare with Prue website. That's available to anyone and everyone. So it's preparewithprue.com, and you will be able to find this budgeting worksheet that is there so that you can get started. Because, as I mentioned, it's not something that is necessarily on the top of our priority list when it comes to having to put together all of this information, but it's certainly going to help you then see where your money is being spent. How much debt are you still carrying? What do you anticipate that your future debt may be, and so forth. So this is a good way to really be honest with ourselves and start to look at how we can do that much more for ourselves. So again, this is a budgeting worksheet that you can obtain through the preparewithprue.com website, but it is a means of sitting down, taking a few moments, going through it, itemizing everything, being honest with ourselves, and then also seeing how we can create opportunities to save more of our money for that future retired individual that we all will become in the future. So Renata, with that.
Yeah, thank you, Dallas. We appreciate you sharing your time and knowledge with everyone here today. We'll now start to address some of the questions that have been filtering in, and please remember that if you have any other questions, you can submit them using the Q&A tool in the webinar menu. As always, you can also reach out to your dedicated service team at Pensionmark for any plan-specific questions. Our first question here. Let's see. So we have, if one lives in a responsible manner with money, is it still beneficial to have a budget?
That's a great question. I believe so. I mean, I think that sometimes we all may get a little out of hand. And so, you know, because there are unforeseen things that come up. So it's not necessarily a matter of having to create one or have one all the time, particularly if you are that type of individual that pretty much has your budget in control without necessarily having it written down. But if there is that unforeseen circumstance that may happen at some point in the time, it's always good to just have something as a backup in case those spending habits get out of control. Now, one of the things I found very interesting with the plan sponsor that I was at was that, and I kind of live by these words, and that is that, you know, all of us can be successful with the amount of money that we have, provided that we live within or below our means. And that is so true. So sometimes I think we do overextend ourselves, or as I mentioned, you know, the car might break down, or there's something that comes up. That is going to happen. But as long as then we can get back on track, then that's what's important.
Okay, thanks, Dallas. Another question that came in, what are your thoughts on either buying or leasing a car?
That's not my area of expertise, and so that would be something that you would want to perhaps explore with your tax advisor, because they definitely would be able to give you and let you know what the benefit would be of buying versus leasing. My at least limited amount of knowledge is typically when people are in business for themselves, the leasing option works best. But again, that's my limited knowledge base. But I think that, you know, for most individuals, if you're looking to have that car for 10 to 12 years or whatever the case may be, then obviously buying would give you probably better outcome in that regard.
Perfect, thank you. And then another one that came in here, should I apply, oh, sorry. If I have extra discretionary income, should I apply it to my children's education savings, like a 529 plan, or apply it to my 401k plan?
Well, that's a great question, too. I think, it's really about balance. And if you do have some type of a 529 plan already in place, then you may want to put more of it towards your retirement. On the other hand, if you don't, not knowing your personal situation, you don't have anything currently set up for the future education of your children, as long as you are also contributing to your 401k, then I think that, it would be important for you to consider creating that 529 plan so that they have, that account set up for their future. So I don't think it's, one or the other. I think it's really about having a balance and making sure that you have both of those covered.
Mm-hmm. And then I think we have time for another one here. In creating my budget, should I consider paying off my students' loans or credit card debt first?
Again, another great question, and not knowing your personal situation, I think it's, would want to look at what is the interest rate on the student loan that you're paying. I mean, what are the terms of the student loan versus credit cards, right? Because, some of those credit cards you might get at 0% interest for a year. So it's a matter of comparing and weighing the two options to see where you might want to apply more of your money in order to minimize the debt that you're carrying. So it's, again, look at the terms and conditions of the student loan versus your credit cards and see which one would be more beneficial for you to pay off sooner.
Well, thank you so much, Dallas. That'll conclude our webinar session. Thank you, attendees, for your participation. Hope everyone has a great day. If you have any other questions, you can email the email that's on your screen right there, or call that number for plan-specific questions, and you'll reach someone here at Pensionmark. We look forward to seeing you all at our next webinar series. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you, everyone.